The following program is paid for and presented by John DeMasi. The opinions expressed are not those of Town Square Media or station advertisers.
WPG Talk Radio 95.5 presents Talk with a Purpose. Join the conversation by calling 609-407-1450. Now the host of Talk with a Purpose, John DeMasi.
Well, it looks like we're going to have some warm weather, but not today. Next week. I mean, it's May already next week. Can you believe that? Where did April go? Oh, good morning and welcome to another edition of Talk with a Purpose every Saturday, 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi, and as always, the number here in the studio, 609-407-1450. That's 609-407-1450. Remember, you can listen on 95.5 FM, 1450 AM, or online, WPGTalkRadio.com. More ways to listen. And we hope that you do for the next 3 hours because it's you and me against the world again. We have fun for 3 hours, don't we? 609-407-1450. Again, that's the number here in the studio. And we do have a lot to talk about today. Trump is in the news again? He's never in the news. Come on. And a lot of other things. But I wanted to start off. And I tell you, there's an old saying that the more that you live, the more you realize that there are old sayings that still ring true today. And the first one that comes to mind is history repeats itself. And then the other one is the more things change, the more they stay the same. And that is probably no truer than what we are seeing on college campuses and protests. Remember the 60s? You remember the late 60s and early 70s? Of course, it was Vietnam they were protesting, and college students were all over the place. I remember walking in to get something done in the student administration and walking in, and there was tons of students sitting on the floor. We had a sit-in then. And then another time I remember I was in ROTC because I had to be, and we were marching in a parade, and there are protesters all over the place, and they're saying, "Oh, you warmonger, you." I'm not a warmonger, but you know that's what was happening. Well, it's happening today, and I'd like to get into this discussion over Gaza and the Palestinians as it relates to the war with Israel, and I'm really disturbed by this. I don't know about you, but I'm really disturbed. And again, it reminds me of all of the protests. And remember when they were protesting Vietnam, and it didn't do any good at the time. And it took several years for the war to end and all of that stuff, and it ended badly. And so I'm thinking now today, why? Why is this happening? You know, the Vietnam War was we can look back on it now and say it was a justifiable protest. But we can't say the same about what's going on now. I mean, there are pro-Palestinian demonstrations, tents being put up on college campuses. I'll tell you what, Columbia University, where a lot of this is happening, costs $67,000 a year. And if my kid was in that protest, you know what I'd do? I'd say, "You're on your own now, kid." And the college administrations are just kind of putting up with this. It's ridiculous. And, you know, they're disrupting classes. And let's say nothing about Jewish students being harassed, threatened. I mean, imagine just going to school. Just normal day of classes, and you're harassed, and you're cursed at, and you're threatened, and maybe you got to be fearful of your life. It's just a ridiculous and disgusting and difficult situation, and the college campuses aren't really doing anything about it. I mean, the protest at Columbia, the administration there, that president should resign. But she's letting it happen. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson called on the president of Columbia, by the way, to resign, saying if she could not immediately bring order to this chaos. He said, as Speaker of the House, I'm committed that the Congress will not be silent as Jewish students are expected to run for their lives and stay home from their classes hiding in fear. I think one college said, oh, we're going to have remote learning for a while. Is that the answer? The whole thing, as I said, is absolutely ridiculous. Students who are participating in this should be expelled or severely disciplined. Can you see if Ronald Reagan was president and this was happening? This wouldn't be happening, that's for sure. Besides, what good is it? Can you tell me what good is it doing for Palestine or Gaza or anybody else involved in this if students are protesting here? It reminds me again of the 60s, and that was a disaster. I mean, the protests didn't immediately stop the war, didn't immediately have any effect on what was happening. So it's just, I don't see the answer except discipline. And by the way, I don't normally like to quote the owner of the New England Patriots, but I commend Robert Kraft because he's an alumnus of Columbia. And he said, I'm pulling all my money. I'm not going to donate any more to Columbia. What? Do you blame him for that? Donating to, and they're letting students, they just let them run amok. And it's all over. It's like campuses all over. It's just not in the East Coast. It's all over the place. That's the new thing now. 3 years ago was George Floyd. Okay. What good did that do? Did it really affect anything? No. And what good is this going to do? Probably none at all, except, get kids away from school. But can you imagine if you took out a loan or something to pay for your kids at Columbia? $67,000 a year? Times that by 4? And you're talking close to $500,000 with other expenses to send a kid to college, and then they put tents up and they disrupt classes, and they disrupted a meeting. That was another thing. What? For what? Reminds me of an old Ricky Waters line. He said one time he didn't catch a pass, and he said, "For who? For what? Why should I extend myself? For who? For what?" That reminds me of that. For who? For what? I hope that we come to our senses, or the college students come to our senses. But I'll bring in Seth Grossman because I know he has a lot to say about this, and he will add some unique perspective. Seth, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose. Seth with Liberty and Prosperity.
I hope so. So I've been putting together notes for the talking points for our breakfast that we have every morning, every Saturday morning, 9:30 to 10:30 at Sal's Cafe. And, of course, it's all posted at libertyandprosperity.com. I'm going to try to talk about 7 topics. Of course, the riots on campus. I'd like to talk about how conservative establishment media is leading us into a dead end by giving us bad arguments and bad candidates. I'd like to talk about Marty Small from the point of view of something called official misconduct, a crime we've never heard about before, and I think we ought to use it more. I'd like to talk about a book someone gave me for my birthday called The Thomas Jefferson Lies by David Barton. Outstanding book. Of course, Egg Harbor City building a $1 million movie studio, and Governor Murphy spending $156 million on solar panels. I'd like to get those topics. But as far as what's going on campus, I really disagree with you, because these campus riots are the same as what we had in 1968, and they're as effective. They're trying to repeat what they did in 1968. Now, who's the they? Who's behind all this? It's basically the same communists today that we had the Cold War with in 1968. I like when people say, oh, well, Russia and China, North Korea are working together. Well, gee whiz, the communist leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, a lifetime secret police agent for the communist regime, working with communist China, with communist North Korea, working with Iran, this Islamo-fascist government that they installed when Jimmy Carter was president. They all went to the same schools. They're all part of the same movement. They're almost part of the same mafia. So, yeah, they're working together. And what's going on in our campuses today is identical to what happened in 1968 when they caused us these riots, together with incompetent military leadership, caused us to lose the war in Vietnam. And because we lost the war in Vietnam, which was sponsored by the Russians at the time under Brezhnev, it forced us to get friendly with communist China and give them our latest money and technology. It was a real catastrophe for the whole Western world, in which these campus riots were a part. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to destroy the free government of Israel today using the identical tactics that worked for them in 1968. Now, just a little point. 1968, I was a freshman at Duke University. In 1968, you had riots at Columbia University in exactly the same way. In fact, I remember the leader was a guy called Mark Rudman. And what they did is they trashed these laboratories in Columbia University. And I remember one particular professor had worked a lifetime to set up all these experiments, and they destroyed 20 years of the guy's work in just a day because they were proving a point. Also, when I was at Duke University, I was a freshman, so nobody knew what a right-wing conservative I was. So I would go to the organizing meetings of these protests, and it was very organized. They were very systematic. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I'll give you an example. At every one of these campus protests in 1968, whether it was Duke University, University of North Carolina, Columbia, Berkeley, they would always come up with 10 non-negotiable demands. And they would sit in or occupy an office or something where the university couldn't function unless the 10 demands were met. And they spent hours and hours making these demands so that 7 or 8 of the demands would be very reasonable that nobody could possibly disagree with. But then they'd stick 1 or 2 items in there that no one in their right mind could agree to. And they did that deliberately. They did that deliberately so they would say, look at these demands and look how reasonable they are, but the administration isn't listening to us, so we're not going to leave. And the whole idea was to force the administration to call in the police. What happens when the police come? Well, the police don't know who the organizers are and who just the ordinary students are, so they'll start arresting innocent people. They'll start roughing up innocent people. You have this horrible video footage, and suddenly the organizers look like a bunch of heroes and the police are the villains. So it's all orchestrated. They know exactly what they're doing. And again, it's very effective. We have about 10 million people in Vietnam. Remember all the boat people who came as refugees? All because our military, with Robert McNamara and William Westmoreland, were the beginning of the incompetent military leadership that we've seen for the past 50 years, working together, with these students to undermine political support for defending our friends abroad. So we have these not just endless wars, we have endless losing wars, and that's really been the pattern for the past 50 or 60 years.
Well, now that you put it that way.
But anyway, so maybe I want to talk about conservative media for a change also, because when I'm speaking just for Seth Grossman now, because I wasn't at the meeting last week. I was in Florida having my personal liberty and prosperity meeting with my Generation X daughter and son-in-law. But we're talking about the conservative media, and one thing we noticed, if you look at what's happened since Rush Limbaugh has been gone. I mean, Rush Limbaugh, he called himself the mayor of Realville. He would tell us the truth. He would look at the long game, and he didn't care if he upset other people in the conservative movement. If people in the movement were making a mistake, he'd point it out. And because of Rush Limbaugh, that's how Republicans won Congress in 1994. Newt Gingrich and those leaders admitted it. The Tea Party taking back the Republican Congress in 2010. Rush Limbaugh, George Bush, Trump, Rush Limbaugh was behind it. But what has happened to conservative media today? You have Tucker Carlson talking about how America was horrible to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. He's talking about the conspiracy of Building 7 on September 11th. You have Candace Owens talking about the poor displaced Germans from World War II in Dresden. In other words, there's no purpose, there's no strategy. You have these so-called conservative media just saying stuff to make themselves important. And it's reminding me of when I got fired from talk radio for the first time. Back, I don't know if you remember this, in the 1990s, before Rush sort of set the standard, it was into what we called as shock jocks, where the program directors would tell us to deliberately pick outrageous issues and say, inflammatory stuff. So people would get angry and call. And the thinking at the time was the more controversy and the more phone calls you had, the better the show and the bigger the audience you had. And I remember I would do my program the way I did it, and I didn't get a lot of phone calls. I would talk about stuff that, to try to educate people or inform people, and I got fired for that. Later on, it was Rush Limbaugh who reminded everybody. He said, when you have one person on the phone, you're talking to one person, and if you cater too much to one person on the phone, you're turning off 10,000 people who are listening. So, but we're going back into that. So anyway, because none of the conservative media, the mainstream media, in my opinion, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Fox News, no one wants to offend their audience. So if the audience is getting it wrong, the radio is just feeding them the misinformation to keep them thinking wrong instead of, I guess, improving the knowledge of the conservative base. I just want to give a couple of examples. I just heard on radio someone saying, well, look at all these horrible riots we have now. When Trump was president, we didn't have riots like this. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what about when Trump was inaugurated January 20th? Remember the pussy hats that women were wearing? Remember breaking the windows in Washington, D.C., setting the fires? Remember in Charlottesville, Virginia, the riots over the removal of the statues? Everybody talks about the Tiki Torch boys, but they didn't get there until after you had all these Antifa people from Seattle and Portland, Oregon had come there and were causing riots, beating up people, destroying property. Do you remember, does the name Bernal Tremel ring a bell with you?
No, it doesn't.
He would, because he never gets mentioned. On July 23rd, he was a well-known black supporter of Donald Trump in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he was just gunned down in broad daylight in front of his store. Did you ever hear any urge for an investigation as to who was behind that murder?
No.
On August 29th, 2020, Aaron Danielson, an American supporter of Trump, had a caravan waving Trump flags. When the protest was over and he was going back to his car, he was gunned down and murdered in Portland, Oregon. But he wasn't just murdered. There was evidence that you had the Antifa people were targeting the Trump supporters and following them and just gunning them down. So I mean, all this stuff was going on when Trump was president. But so to say that this stuff is happening for the first time, it's not true. And look what we have going on in Congress. Because of this, nobody could criticize a conservative, where nobody could encourage productive debate. Who are the leaders of the conservative movement now in Congress? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Lauren Boebert. You have Kristi Noem, the hero, the governor, the Republican governor in South Dakota. Who, now she's bragging about how she shot her puppy because the puppy wasn't properly trained. All these people have done is turn a 30 or 40 majority, Republican majority in the House of Representatives to a one-vote majority. What constructive stuff is going on? So I'm going to talk about the changes that I think are really happening outside the conservative, traditional conservative media. You have a lot of liberals who now, after seeing how the Democrats have gone nuts, you have Democrats are actually writing some good stuff. One of them is, you have somebody called Barry Weiss, who used to work for the New York Times. She was fired because she was too pro-Israel. She formed something called the Free Press. You have a guy called Yuri Berliner, used to be a top executive of NPR, National Public Radio, writing openly for the first time how awful NPR is and how they rig the news. And a particular thing from the Newsweek magazine, Batya Ungar-Sargon wrote a piece where she explained what is causing this problem in our universities. And this is Stockton University as well. The teaching is if somebody is weak, they are automatically righteous and virtuous. And if somebody is strong and successful, they're automatically evil and oppressive. And this wrong thinking is being pumped into our kids' heads, and that's behind everything. So hopefully I'm going to make, through our conversation, Barry Weiss, Yuri Berliner, and Batya Ungar-Sargon, people you've never heard of, hopefully as well known as Jesse Waters and the Five and the others, because I think that may be the future of conservative media. Just a thought, but I'll test it out. or maybe I could go to the meeting this morning and they'll say, Grossman, you're nuts. You've been in Florida too long. Let's talk about something else.
They say that anyway, don't they?
Well, this is why, and by the way, this is what Benjamin Franklin talked about, the value of having open conversations with people of different opinions. You always end up leaving the room smarter than when you walked in. So I'm really looking forward to that discussion. One other or two other points. With Marty Small, of course, most of the discussion has been about the situation in his family. But as a lawyer, one of the things I find most interesting is the fact that the principal of Atlantic City High School is being charged with a crime called official misconduct. Now, that statute or that crime has been on the books for 100 years. And it used to be used a whole lot. But in the entire time I've been practicing law, this is the first time I remember somebody being charged with official misconduct in a high-profile case like this. Now, what's official misconduct? It's when you're a public official and the law tells you to do something a certain way, and you don't follow the law, not only can you be sued to force you to follow the law, but a prosecutor can actually indict you and send you to jail for not doing what the law told you to do. And it's a very important crime. And of course, back when Chris Christie was governor and they had the Atlantic City takeover, you heard me hollering almost every time I was on a radio, how could Atlantic City, just one example, Atlantic City had an obligation to pay health benefits for its employees and pension benefits. And for a year and a half, Atlantic City just refused to pay health benefits. They were promising health benefits, but they weren't paying the money into the fund to pay for them. That was blatantly illegal. That was official misconduct. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see now that the Atlantic County prosecutor has resurrected this crime of official misconduct for the principal of Atlantic City High School. I wonder if we will see that law applied anywhere else. So that's a topic for discussion. Just two quick things. Jefferson Lies, fantastic book on history by David Barton. It's very rare that I read a book, because I think I read a lot, where I'm reading something that I never knew, and it's something I always believed was true, but it turns out it's not true. But David Barton makes a very convincing case that the talk of Thomas Jefferson having an affair with his 14-year-old slave girl, Sally Hemings, the whole thing was a complete lie. It was made up by, I guess, the equivalent of the Roger Stone of the 1800s. It's been documented it's a lie. Thomas Jefferson never had that relationship, never was the father of children with a slave. And the fact that it was brought up as an academic historical truth, the only reason that happened was because at the time in the 1990s, Bill Clinton was being accused of sexual misconduct. And so you had academia deliberately made up a whole fake story about Thomas Jefferson to make Bill Clinton look good. And that just shows how, and there are many other examples in his book, but it just shows how political agendas ruin everything. And I guess the final point, the solar panels, if you think wind turbines are bad and based on a lie, solar panels are even worse. Governor Murphy said, we're spending $156 million on solar panels that will serve about 750,000 homes with electricity. Simple question. How many homes do they serve at night? How many homes do they serve when a cloud goes by? Zero.
Yeah.
That's the problem with solar energy. Anyway, I've got to get back to my own meeting and see if how they're going to react to what I said on the radio, because a lot of them just sit in the parking lot listening to John DeMasi, and so they could respond when I finally get there.
Okay.
LibertyandProsperity.com. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Seth. Thanks. LibertyandProsperity.com is the website. Seth Grossman, of course, Liberty and Prosperity. That's the group. I'm John DeMasi, Talk with a Purpose, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. We'll get started with John and Bob and maybe you at 609-407-1450. We'll get started after these words.
The finest fresh fruit and produce you'll find anywhere? Check. Award-winning gift baskets and fruit baskets? Check. Baked goods and prepared foods? Check. They check all the boxes. B.F. Mazzio, 601 New Road, Northfield. And that's not all. Gourmet items, specialty foods, and catering for all occasions. It's all right there. Check them out online at bfmazzio.com. That's bfmazzio.com. B.F. Mazzio, 601 New Road, Northfield.
All right, let's get started here. Talk with a Purpose. 609-407-1450. That's our number. Let's talk to John in Ocean City. John, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose. Hello? John, are you there? Not there? Okay. Let's talk to Bob in Cape May. Bob, good morning.
Hey, good morning, John. Look, I usually agree with Seth Grossman 100%. Seth's a good friend of mine, but Seth is dead wrong when he's criticizing Tucker Carlson and Candace Owen on the points of the bombing, the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That was pure evil. That's all it was. Dropping an atomic bomb and incinerating innocent civilians is not a civilized thing to do.
But it ended the war, Bob.
John, another way could have been found, a very easy way. Okay, just demonstrate to the Japanese, drop the bomb on one of their islands, and it could have been done another way. The Japanese were reeling already. There was no reason to invade that island. That is the big excuse given to drop the bomb. Is the island of Japan. The invasion would have cost hundreds of thousands of American lives. And that may be correct, but there was no reason to invade that island. There really wasn't, John. If we had that bomb, any reasonable human being sees the power of that atomic bomb.
Oh, it was powerful. There's no question about that.
The Japanese leaders were not total madmen. It could have been demonstrated to them that, look, the war is over now. And as far as Dresden goes, and Candace Owen criticizing the American, and it was the English. The English sent 250 Lancaster bombers to Dresden, which was a city that had no military, no strategic, and no economic importance as far as the outcome of the war was concerned. By 1945, it was over. The German army was in retreat. It was over. Dresden was a city of 630,000 people. My father rode his bicycle through Dresden when he was escaping the Soviet hordes that took everything from him in Europe. And he told me the story. The asphalt was totally boiling. Not when he was there, but you could see it was boiling. These people were incinerated on purpose. And the leaders that decided this, Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt, they did not commit genocide on the scale of Stalin and Hitler, but these people were evil people. They're absolutely evil people. There was no reason to do this. Okay, this was pure revenge. Okay, and had the winners of the war been the other side, these leaders could have been prosecuted for war crimes, just like the Nazis were prosecuted for war crimes. There is not a pure, it's not that simple. It's not black and white. It's more nuanced. It's much more nuanced. There was a lot of evil going on in World War II, and it wasn't all from the other side. It was also from our side.
Well,
that's just the truth.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and it's the first time I've really heard you say something like that. And I don't know what to tell you except that I know it ended the war. So that's all I.
Well, but John, the war was essentially over on both sides of the world. I mean, especially in Europe. Okay, you had overwhelming odds that the Russians were just rolling right through Eastern Europe. Okay. The German army was in massive retreat, and then you had the invasion, the D-Day invasion. It was going to be over regardless. There was no reason to firebomb these cities. There was no reason for it, other than extracting revenge on innocent people. That collective guilt is a terrible thing.
Yeah,
collective guilt it has no room in civilized society, John. You can look. My parents were in present-day Slovakia, in a ethnic German area. My father, for 2 years, For 2 years, he kept his accountant safe from the Nazis. He kept him safe. He kept his Jewish accountant safe, protected him, the accountant and his family. Okay, you cannot make everyone of a certain ethnicity guilty. Okay, it's as I said, it's more nuanced.
Yeah,
it is more nuanced. You cannot inflict. You cannot kill people, just innocent people, just because they're a certain ethnicity, race, what have you. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So, that's a point I'm just making, and I think we could have done something other than drop those bombs on those innocent civilians. Robert Oppenheimer, who was the father of the U.S. Manhattan Project that created the atomic bomb, he had all sorts of moral issues with what happened. He was plagued by that, by what happened to those innocent people in Japan. I mean, so anyway, John.
Yeah,
I think I've run out of steam.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. That's a different perspective, especially from you, and. I respect that, but we're going to agree to disagree on that one. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks for the call, Bob. Appreciate it. 609-407-1450. Got some open lines if you want to jump in here. 609-407-1450. It is Talk with a Purpose every Saturday, 9 till noon. WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. We'll get back to the calls and your thoughts and your comments and whatever. Whether it's about the protests on college campuses or World War II. Hey, you never know what we're going to get into here on the show. We will come back with more of Talk with a Purpose in just a moment. But first, we talk about the good stuff. That, of course, is BF Mazzeo. BF Mazzeo, 601 New Road in Northfield. I told you this. I told you the story, my olive oil story, a couple of weeks ago, where I paid $34.99 for olive oil. Well, it was not at BF Mazzeo, that's for sure. BF Mazzeo has imported olive oil, and you can get it right there, and you can pour it in the bottle yourself. And then you keep the bottle, and you go back again for more, but it's not $34.99, I can tell you that. But that's one of the things that they have. And they also have, and I've never talked about this, the olive tray. There's all kinds of olives. And you'll see that in the back of the store. This is all in the back of the store. And, you got to go around the whole store. You just don't go around the front. You go around the back. You see a lot of things. Gourmet items, specialty foods, cheeses. I mean, there are more kinds of cheeses there than you'll find anywhere. And spreads, all kinds of spreads. I mean, it's just too numerous to mention. But that's just one of the things different about BF Mazzeo. BF Mazzeo, 601 New Road in Northfield, and online at bfmazzeo.com. And remember, with Mother's Day coming up, the fruit flower arrangements are a very unique gift, and you can add that to your list of what to do for Mom for Mother's Day. Fruit flowers and chocolate-covered strawberries, and they have charcuterie boards. How do you like that? I mean, it's all right there. BF Mazzeo, 601 New Road, Northfield. Online at bfmazzeo.com. bfmazzeo.com is the website. We're coming back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
If you're interested in driving one of the finest automobiles on the market today, then you'll want to check out all of the fabulous new and pre-owned Lexus at Lexus of Atlantic City. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Driving a Lexus is like no other vehicle on the market. Test drive one for yourself at Lexus of Atlantic City. Whether it's new or pre-owned, you'll be more than satisfied. In fact, Lexus is consistently #1 when it comes to customer satisfaction. Visit Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Or you can check out their outstanding selection of new, pre-owned, and L-certified pre-owned vehicles on their website, LexusOfAtlanticCity.com. That's LexusOfAtlanticCity.com. Or if you want more information, call 609-641-0008. Lexus of Atlantic City, now celebrating their 26th year in the area. A dealership that you'll enjoy. No pressure, no gimmicks, no hassle, no hype. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. And remember, always online at lexusofatlanticcity.com.
Your WPG Talk Radio 95.5 AccuWeather forecast for South Jersey. Some sun and turning cloudy for today, the high at 60. Mostly cloudy for tonight, low 49. Sun and clouds tomorrow, the high 81. Partly sunny, warmer on Monday, the high Monday at 89. Tuesday, partly sunny, warm, a thunderstorm for the late afternoon, the high on Tuesday at 85. I'm AccuWeather Steve Williams on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose, if you want to email me during the week, JDADV as in Victor, number 1 at Comcast.net. JDADV1 at Comcast.net. Email me anything you like, program suggestions, pro or con reports on the show. Bring it all on. JDADV1 at Comcast.net. Let's go back to the phones. We have John is back. John in Ocean City.
Yes. Sorry about that, man. This phone is weird. Yeah, what happened to Dresden and Hiroshima and Nagasaki it's disgraceful. That's my opinion. But anyway, I want to bring up the online media news outlet that Frank has dismissed as being bogus. I'm talking about the London Crier. I call it alternative media, but nonetheless, it claims to stream out of London, England, but that doesn't mean it does stream out of London, England. Touche, Frank, touche. But anyway, who knows where they I know where they broadcast. They broadcast from the Kremlin. That's Russian disinformation. That's all.
Poor Frank, John. Poor Frank. He's just probably sitting there listening, and here his name comes up again, and he didn't even do anything. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Anyway, they should change their name to the Moscow Crier instead of the London Crier. Yeah. But anyway, this idea that Zelensky did not buy the Highgrove House, you have to take into account that Grant Harold, who was the butler for then Prince Charles, who has been keeping abreast of what's going on over there, and he is a British citizen, has said that, yes, it was sold as of February 29th this year, 2024, for 20 million pounds, 25,274,000 American dollars. Anyway, I want to bring up there's dozens and dozens of reputable, credible, and legitimate sites that are actually bogus as far as I'm concerned, that have actually they've called it all Russian disinformation, but I call BS on these three online sites, that being Snopes. Now, the AP, which is the Associated Press, which is no citadel or beacon of right-wing conservatism, that's for sure. So they're not special pleaders for President Trump, but they actually exposed Snopes for multiple instances of plagiarism, and also they've been embroiled in lawsuits going back to 2017. Well, so much for credibility. And the Daily Mail, what's it said about the Daily Mail? Okay. The consensus about the Daily Mail, which is out of Britain, is that they're unreliable. They print disinformation about science and medicine, and they have multiple instances of plagiarism and copyright infringement as well. So much for reputability. Yeah, they have a reputation, all right, but it's not a good one. And then finally, AOL. AOL that's America Online, and they have a computer bulletin board, and a troll went on there, and he actually put the actual man's name up. It's Kenneth Zeran. You can look it up. Kenneth Zeran versus AOL. And they supposedly he had made defamatory statements about what happened at the Oklahoma City bombing. We're going back to the late 1990s, or mid-1990s, rather. And he had supposedly made very vulgar and evil remarks about the people that lost their lives there, about the little babies, really disgusting stuff. And he says, if you're interested, I have T-shirts. And he said that the troll posted T-shirts with all kind of obscene and vulgar language on it. He actually gave the man's phone number out. The man actually received numerous death threats. So he tried to bring it to the attention of AOL. They ignored it. So he filed a class action lawsuit against the AOL. But they took shelter of a Section 230, which gives protection for. In other words, they can't be responsible for what some bozo did on their outlet. But they never took it down, and they never gave a retraction. So these so-called reputable sites, legitimate, incredible sites, are I call BS on them. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the call. Linda in Absec. And Linda, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Hello, John.
Hello, Linda.
So do you know who else was against dropping those bombs?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Do you know who else was against dropping those 2 bombs on Japan?
You.
A little more. No. It would be Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Oh, okay.
And it would be General MacArthur.
Pretty big names.
Yeah. You know why?
Why?
They said the war was just about over. That's a loose paraphrase, but
yeah.
I'm telling you, Bob's a tough guy. I mean, he's
well, that's the first time he was so passionate about a particular subject.
he's passionate about everything.
Well, you know that, but this is the first time on my show that he really showed the passion that he has. So.
No, he's just he's a gentleman, and he usually comes loaded for bear with his facts. Truly,
yeah, I can't say too much about him because he's a LaSalle grad, and so am I. So we alumni have to stick together.
And however, one man had the right to drop it, and that was Truman. And I feel the way Bob does, and I hold nothing against Truman.
It was
for having dropped it.
It was a tough decision. Again, I didn't disagree with it, but there's two sides to every story, and that's okay.
My husband didn't disagree with it.
Oh, okay.
But you can't ignore. We used to be pretty good Americans, and you can't ignore the fact that it's a horrible thing.
Well, it was. That's true.
And you had two pretty fine generals feeling that the war was just about in the position where it could be handled. And yeah.
Well, again, that's the opinion, and we respect it. And Linda, thanks for the call. Thank you for participating. Chris in Summers Point. Chris, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Hi, good morning, John. Thanks for taking my phone call.
Thanks for calling, Chris.
I respect Bob. I respectfully disagree with his opinion on the 2 bombs. I'm served in the military myself. I agree with you. At the end of the day, it was a tough decision by Truman, but
yeah, it was.
There's a lot of facts that Bob's missing. I mean, you got to ask back at the time. I mean, anyone can sit back in their armchair 79 years later and debate about that whole.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, John, you know that. I mean, but dropping those 2 bombs probably saved about 1 million of our guys' lives because, look, we didn't want to get in that war. I mean, ask the parents or the wives of the 3,000 sailors that got killed at Pearl Harbor. We didn't ask that.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
that's right. We didn't.
Anyone can sit back and say, well, you shouldn't drop those bombs, but at the end of the day, how many times are you going to ask the emperor to surrender and he's going to tell you no? I mean, he wasn't going to give up. I mean, you know that, John. He wasn't.
Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, hey, it ended the war, that's for sure.
it ended the war, and it saved probably a lot of our lives. And unfortunately, like you and I both know, war is hell. Nobody wants it. I didn't want those people to die in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but at the end of the day, like we say, war is hell. Nobody wants it. But, I mean, I'm sure if you would have pulled those people in those 2 islands, that they would have probably told the emperor to surrender, but they didn't have a say. Unfortunately, the actions of one affect the actions of many, and that's unfortunate about that whole situation.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, though, too. They weren't sorry about Pearl Harbor.
No, they weren't. I mean, so it's not like we didn't start that.
No, that's right. It's
so. And here's the other thing, John. The war was going on for 7 years. I mean, much longer did it have to go on? I mean, we lost a lot of time to begin with. So, I mean, what the heck? I mean, at some point, enough's enough. I mean, it's like you got to stop it somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's right. It was too long. That's for sure. I mean, that is
too long. And Truman was in a tough situation. I'm not saying that was an easy situation for him to make that decision, but I agree with him at the end of the day. I mean,
so do I.
Like you said, no one's applauding it, but at the end of the day, it did end the war, like you said. That's what the outcome was.
Okay, thanks a lot for the call, Chris. Steve in Absecon Island. Steve, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Good morning, John. Always a terrific program, and once again, my buttons are pushed.
Okay.
So I had to call in.
Okay. What pushed them this time?
I wish I could just listen. Well, I respect all my American comrades in the U.S., if I could use the word comrade in a funny, jokingly way.
Oh,
but,
sure.
You know, we're a democracy, and I have to push back vehemently. And I think I had this conversation on your program before where there's only one, and I agree with Chris, and I worked for the DOD as a software engineer, and helping our troops during the Iraq War in 2007. There's only one moral imperative for our government, and that when you're in war, and that is to win the war.
Yeah.
Protect the soldiers at all costs, then protect the civilian population, and protect your resources of the country. That's the moral imperative. And the rules of engagement today are idiotic, where when you're in Iraq and Afghanistan, and don't shoot unless, we tell you to shoot. And I spoke to many retired military personnel that were in the theater in Iraq. And a lot of them, when they're on base, they're carrying their firearms with them, but they couldn't be locked and loaded with a round in the chamber and a magazine in the receiver. And I'm saying, why? And they said, well, even if we get, shot at, we can't return fire unless we're told to. And to me, that violates the moral imperative. Now, getting back to Bob's statement, I want to read a letter that my Uncle Butch Checkman wrote, who was a U.S. Army, was in the Patton's 3rd Army, 11th Armored Division, June 14th, 1945. So the war's been over for, half a month or so. And it says here, somewhere in Czechoslovakia, somewhere in Austria, pardon me. I'm just going to read you an excerpt.
Okay.
He says he's writing to his sister in Philadelphia, South Philly. And he says, I hope I never have to experience the hell and horrors that I and my buddies have experienced through, and hope they do not ship us to the Pacific. Let me read that last one. I hope they do not ship us to the Pacific. Okay? So when it comes to protecting when it comes to ensuring that the moral imperative, win the war, protect the soldiers, protect civilians, and protect resources, I say you do everything possible to win the war. And then you have to hope that the side that wins the war reestablishes habeas corpus and all the niceties that our terrific Republican-style government has to offer. When Bob said that there would be war crime trials if the Nazis would have won, war crime trials, they had no such idea of what a Republican-style government would be with habeas corpus. So when I heard that with Bob, I said, Bob, I understand that your father helped an individual who was being persecuted solely based on his religion. I get it. We need more people like your family in the world. But how do you thread the needle? How do you conduct a war and get the bad guys when all the bad guys are intermingled with the good guys? Right?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, that's right. Impossible.
I want to say a couple other things. From a historical standpoint, World War II has many similarities to what's going on today. What is an there's no, the protests today it's hard to compare the anti-war protests of the 60s to the so-called anti-democracy, pro-Hamas protests of today on college campuses. Yes, they're the same. They were on college campuses and they're protesting the war. But it's thinly veiled today. It's anti-democracy. It's pro-Hamas, who is I'll throw out all the words. They're dictators. They're fascists. They're terrorists. They do not have freedom of religion, freedom of speech. They take all the money from the world banks and all of us liberal countries, and they use it to build tunnels and to support war efforts instead of maybe building hotels on the Mediterranean coast there and creating tourism. It's the most. It's hard for me to even wrap my head around it. How people can even, under a thinly veiled guise of anti-war protest, when it's really an anti-democracy, anti-free speech, anti-freedom of religion protest. You remember back in history the Bund rallies, B-U-N-D, that the Nazis used to hold in Washington, D.C. and New York?
Don't remember that, but go ahead.
Well, Google it, Bund rallies. You'll pop up the big one in February 20th, 1939. Look at the images. It's almost the same. Why fight Hitler? He didn't attack us. That's what they were saying in 1939. And then under a big picture of George Washington, who was against tyranny with King George, you're seeing all these Nazi brown shirts standing there under the George Washington picture, and they're using our freedoms to espouse this vile rhetoric. And people are being hooked on it. Yeah. And I don't get it.
I don't either.
And unless
got to run, Steve. We're up against the news. Sorry for that. If you want, you have more to say, you can call back. 609-407-1450. Hour number one is rapidly coming to a close. I mean, it's in the books already. Talk with a Purpose is the show. Saturdays 9 till noon. WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Hour number two is on the way. Don't go away.
WPGG Atlantic City, WENJ HD3 Millville, a Town Square media station. Everything you need to know in 6 minutes starts now. WPG Talk Radio 95.5 presents Talk with a Purpose. Join the conversation by calling 609-407-1450. Now the host of Talk with a Purpose, John DeMasi.
Hour number two, Talk with a Purpose, every Saturday, 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Good to have your company for the next couple of hours here. We go till noon, and tell you about Carmen. Carmen's going to be doing his show from a hospital bed in Norway. We wish him the best, and we wish him a speedy recovery. Don't know what else is wrong, but that's what the story is. But anyway, I digress. Hour number two, we are going to talk about Harvey Weinstein is back in the news, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, let's get to the calls. Linda is back. Linda in Absecon, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Excuse me. My father-in-law, he was an officer over in Japan. And when they had recaptured the islands, and the Japanese would not give up, and they would throw in something into the caves, and the Japanese that were in the caves, they wouldn't come out. So you had to resort to the horrible. And that was the flamethrowers that they would fire into the caves.
Jeez.
Yeah, and the smell was horrific.
Oh, I can imagine.
He was shot. His Jeep was shot. He was hit with a howitzer. His brother was over in Germany. He was a tank commander. He got his head blown off when he stuck his head out of the tank. My father was all over Germany. He got shooting awards for rifling in in Paris, in Luxembourg, and Germany, and ended up dead.
Oh, boy.
And he was interred 3 times over in Germany. And but the people in Japan, I can remember listening to a woman talking about after the war. When you talk about what the people might have done or wouldn't have done, the people loved their emperor. I believe they almost regarded him as deity. And then I can remember them. What always amazed me is how accepting the Japanese were of the Americans after the war. Well, of course, it's all right. We go to war with America, you'll usually end up the second or third highest economy in the world. America would be the first, but right. For the longest time it was Germany and Japan. And excuse me, please, but no, it's a horrible thing, a horrible war.
Yeah, that's.
And why would you? So why would anyone, even your callers? I mean, we're talking about General MacArthur, and we're talking about Dwight D. Eisenhower, and we're talking about who was the other general I mentioned? Just the two: Dwight D. Eisenhower and MacArthur, and their educated opinion was that they had the manpower. Things were such that they felt it was doable. Now, I don't know if a couple 100,000 lives being saved. I don't know how accurate that figure is. I remember reading about it, and I don't think it was that high. I stand to be corrected, however.
Yeah,
so,
but Linda, we never factor in, and one of the callers did, but you never factored in Pearl Harbor. I mean, that was an attack that we didn't provoke. They did it. And there was a lot of lives lost.
3,000.
Right. So,
Oh, no. It's not lost why we did this.
Yeah. Well,
right. On the average American.
Right. I mean, it's war. It's a shame, but I just agree with it. For whatever reason.
So, what do you think about war on those babies? Do you know that 19 states, I think we're up to 19 states here in America, that will allow babies up to their last 15 minutes to off them, I guess. Just off them. Right up to their last 15 minutes.
Oh, that's wrong. I'm going to do a story later on, by the way. Idaho is one of 14 states where abortion is banned for all stages of pregnancy with very limited exceptions.
I guess the states really are going to have to work a little harder at resolving this problem. But there never was a problem when the AMA had it, right? Before Roe versus Wade, how do you think these decisions were made? The American Medical Association made them. Yeah. Doctors came in and they said they would go up to a patient and they would say either, Mrs. Smith, your baby, unless something happens with your baby, you are going to be dead in 3 hours, or you and your child are both going to die. We can save one or we can save the other. But that's how the AMA handled that. So we never needed what we have now. Now we have a slaughterhouse. And if you think, we have to vote for a politician, we have to make sure that he's on the right side of this abortion. There is no right side. There's only death.
That's right. That's right.
You're patronizing me, John. You're patronizing me.
No, you're right. You're right. That's all there is to it.
Okay.
Thanks for the call, Linda. Ed and Cape May Courthouse. Ed, good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I just want to touch on the atomic bomb and its use in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm in favor of when it was used, and so was my father, who was a World War II Army veteran. And the only reservation he had over any of the fire bombings of other cities in Japan and Germany was Dresden. And from what I have read on history, Dresden was not much of a military target. And if there were any military targets, it was on the outer periphery of the city because it dates back about 1,000 years and was a center of Christianity in Northern Europe. And the architecture goes back, to the medieval times. And all that was destroyed, I think, out of spite, mainly because of the British. Bomber Harris wanted revenge for the, initially the 1940-41 blitz on London and other British cities, plus the V1 and V2 attacks on various cities in England in 1944 and 45 time frame. So they got back, but they destroyed about 1,000 years of history. And in Japan, Nagasaki was a center of Christianity there as well. And I read some probably, I don't know if it's accurate, but the reason why the British and the American high commands, particularly the political administrations, chose those two cities was because out of spite, they knew it was centers of Christianity in Asia and in Northern Europe, and it destroyed them. And Nagasaki is I think it was in the same kind of a situation where it wasn't much of a military target within the center city core. There was installations on the outer periphery which could have been attacked. So I'll leave it to historians to look into that further. But I know in latter years, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they started to rebuild with Eastern Germany after it was united, my father said, Dresden was kind of like should be like a World Heritage city. And I don't know where they actually fully restored that city to its former self. I know they restored that beautiful cathedral, but I don't know about the other architecture, which is probably lost forever, along with ancient manuscripts that were and records that were kept going back. Yeah. It's like bombing Paris. It would be equivalent if you want to put it that way. And the Germans refused to destroy the city. The German command just refused Hitler's orders to use dynamite to blow the city when they were retreating and withdrawing from the advance of the American, French, and British, Canadian forces in France at the time.
Yeah. Well, we got a little history lesson there, Ed. Thanks for the call. Oh, Greg and Absec. And Greg, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Mr. Massey, good morning.
Morning, sir.
Very interesting conversation we'd be having.
Yeah.
But, Nagasaki, my father was in Okinawa. He followed the Marines as a cleanup crew. He was in the Army. And he gets a call from the commander's office. He wants to see you. He thought he was going home. He says, you're going to Nagasaki. And my father remembered it until he died. What the hell was in Nagasaki? He had no idea that we had dropped the bomb on it.
Yeah.
He was a union painter glazer, and all he was going there was to replace all the glass. Him and a whole plane full of people to repair and get the airports and the hangars back into shape so they could bring in military supplies.
Boy.
As far as war, we haven't fought a war since the Second World War, according to our records. We have police actions, intervention.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And now, number one candidate for assassination in the world right now, who do you think it is?
Donald Trump.
Netanyahu.
Oh.
A serious, number one. Wanted dead or alive. He's doing what he has to do to survive. What do we want him to do? We need a timeout.
Yeah.
A timeout for what? To do what? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. you know, the interesting thing
and
is
supplying both sides.
Yeah, interesting thing. Hamas attacked Israel. They attacked them. So why all this fuss? I mean, they were just retaliating. I don't understand it. I really don't.
Their bottom line is they have to win. It's not a question of just winning. They must win.
Yeah.
And if someone's saying, as a slogan, from the river to the sea, to get rid of them, they're going. They don't exist anymore, so they have no choice.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think we can get that through our head. These people want them totally annihilated.
Yeah.
And he's doing exactly what he has to do to survive, and his people. So.
Okay, Greg, thank you. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. 609-407-1450, that's the number here. Talk with a Purpose is the show. Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. We have Tony, and then we have Chuck, and then maybe we have you after the break. 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. But before that, we pause for this message from one of the best in the business. And we're talking about automobiles. And we're talking about one of the highest ranking automobiles in the country. And that is Lexus, courtesy of Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road, EHT, which you should visit whether you're in the market for a car or not. You may not know you are, and you may end up getting one. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Stop by Lexus of Atlantic City and see all of the new cars and all of the pre-owned vehicles and all of the inventory. It's all right there at Lexus of Atlantic City. Again, 3169 Fire Road, EHT. And online at aclexus.com. aclexus.com is the website. And, you know, I've talked about converting and taking people from one particular brand to a Lexus. And a friend of my niece's, a couple years ago, she went over to Lexus of Atlantic City, and she converted. And she loved the car, so much so that she went and got another one. She recently got an SUV and loves it. So, hey, look, it's possible. You can love your Lexus, as a lot of other people do. Again, Lexus of Atlantic City, aclexus.com is the website, aclexus.com. And as I've said many times, I've driven Lexus since 2007, haven't driven anything else, and will not drive anything else. And it's just a way of life with the car. You just don't really do anything to them. It's the standard maintenance, brakes, tires, oil change filter. That's it. And it just runs. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road, EHT, and online at aclexus.com. We're coming back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
I'm Seth Grossman for libertyandprosperity.com. Last month, American Thinker published an article I wrote about the war in the Middle East. I call it 13 key facts about Israel that are known by very few Americans. I invite you to Google it or look it up at libertyandprosperity.com. One is that Palestine was never an Arab nation. It was the name that a Roman emperor gave to Israel after he crushed a Jewish rebellion there. Another is that most of Israel or Palestine was mostly empty malaria swamp and desert until about 100 years ago. Most Arabs did not move there until after Jews drained the swamps, watered the deserts, and planted trees and crops. Learn more about these and other important facts about Jews, Christians, and Arabs in and around Israel. Visit libertyandprosperity.com. Help us reach more people, join our weekly breakfast, donate what you can to keep us on the air and online. libertyandprosperity.com.
Welcome back to Talk with a Purpose. If you want to listen to any of our shows at any time, you do this little thing called Google John DeMasi Podcasts. And guess what? They all come up. Over 200 shows. So you can pick and choose, listen anytime you want, anywhere, as long as you have a device. This is radio on demand. It's a fabulous invention. John DeMasi Podcast. You Google that, and all the shows come up. It is Talk with a Purpose every Saturday, 9 till noon. WPG Talk Radio 95.5. Let's talk to Tony in AC. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. DeMasi. Interesting, very interesting. When I was listening and everybody's speaking about their dads, what they did in World War II. My dad was an engineer at Allegheny College in Brooklyn. And he made ammunition during the war. He busted up his knee playing football. He was a good baseball player, too. But I started to think about society and the fellow that mentioned that they should have bombed the remote island. I liken that to like slavery. There was no minimum wage law yet, and there were certainly not enough printing presses to print up money. So these people were farm workers. But then I started thinking it would have been a great deterrent. I would wish they had enough atomic bombs. I know they had at least 2. They probably had a few more. So it would have been something to really try. It was like, remember that movie where that Greek football player, remember when he knocks out the horse?
Yeah.
I can't remember the name. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, well, they anybody with a brain would have talked to the Prime Minister of Japan or whoever was in charge, whatever his name was, and said, listen, we're going to drop an atomic bomb on a remote island, and tell me what you think afterwards. You still want to continue the war? I know a couple of your callers, most of your callers are very astute in history, and I'm a lightweight. I barely opened the book. I opened it from the back.
Me too.
I opened it from the back. I didn't like the ending, so I didn't like the beginning. But it was too bad it didn't happen. It would have been something that they should have tried in retrospect, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Good stuff.
From a lightweight.
Good stuff, Tony. Thanks for the call. Yeah, I don't know what this show took a direction, and we're talking about World War II, and, well, you never know here on the show. Whatever direction we go, Chuck and Absec. And Chuck, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Hey, John, I'll comment on World War II and the bombs, but I'm going to bring it into today's and what's going on to today. See, back in World War II, we were fighting a mindset. You had the Emperor and Hitler in Germany, teamed up, bombed Pearl Harbor, and drug us into the war. And this was Germany's second go at it, right?
Yeah.
They had World War I, now we have World War II, and it's right. Germany and Japan. We're fighting a mindset. Remember the kamikazes, John? That was
yeah.
Okay? Those planes, if they ran out of ammunition or if they had a wind shot off, kamikaze was a suicide mission.
Yeah.
Okay? They're flying their planes into our ships, and that was for the Emperor. Okay? Now, what do you think would have happened if Germany or Japan got the bomb first? Because that was a race to get the bomb.
Yeah.
Okay? We just happened to win that race. And that ended the war.
Yeah.
Okay? And let me remind everybody, war is to kill people and blow things up. That is war.
That's right.
Okay? And in this country, we had the same thing going on. Our car manufacturer factories were making bombs. The women were put to work supporting our troops because the men were fighting. Okay, so that being said, that ended the war and saved lives. Probably saved my father's life, who was in the Reconstruction over there because he had a trade. He was a carpenter, so he wasn't on the front line. You know what he saw, John? He saw the concentration camps with Eisenhower. Okay, and Ike made sure that they took a lot of pictures. You know why? Because people today wouldn't believe that it happened. Okay, he made sure of that. He knew that propaganda and twisting stories would happen if they didn't have the facts and the pictures to back it up.
That's right.
Back in the right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's fast forward to today. Hamas goes into Israel and totally obliterates their citizenship.
Yeah.
Atrocities that you can't even talk about on the radio, John. We'll just say, okay, the raping of women and the bloodshed, the murder, the incineration of babies in ovens. Okay, we'll just leave it at that for right now. The stories are much worse. They haven't been told because they're so graphic, and the people today can't handle it. Okay, so Hamas goes in there totally targeting the civilians of Israel, and Israel retaliates, okay, and goes into Gaza, surgically going after Hamas, okay, trying to, and in the meantime, they're suffering their own casualties because they're trying to surgically go after Hamas only.
Right.
Okay, while Hamas is hiding behind hospitals. Okay, now let me ask you something, John. How's that working out for Israel? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What we have going on in this country today, with "Death to America" being chanted in our universities because the propaganda.
Yeah.
Do you realize where this money is coming from? That's fronting these groups.
Yeah.
It's very easy to put a community organization together. Okay.
Yeah.
With cell phones today.
Yes, that's right.
It's beyond me. Okay, so let me ask you this now. So let's say Japan or Germany got the bomb first. What do you think's going to happen if Iran gets news?
That's right. They're going to use it.
Okay, so come on, people.
Yeah, it's
let's wake up here a little bit.
Yeah.
What happened in the 40s with the bomb? That was the end of war to save our men's lives and to put that war to rest. And to stamp out that mindset of the emperor and whatever the hell Hitler was at that time.
Yeah, that's right.
All right,
no.
John, that's I mean, history's repeating itself.
Yes,
people.
it is. Yes, it is. I said that at the beginning of the show.
Great show.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Bob is, or, that was Chuck. Oh, Steve. Steve in Absecon Island. Steve is back. Good morning, Steve.
Thanks. Hi, John. Thanks for having me call back. I just wanted to wrap up. I couldn't agree with the last caller more. I just want to add, Hamas is an Islamist movement. It's a mindset, as the last caller said.
Yeah.
They want to control the world's religion. Only one religion. You'll have no freedom of religion. You'll have to succumb. There's not going to be any freedom of speech. You recall the Norman Rockwell picture of 1943 that he drew, the four freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear.
Yeah.
The protests that are to bring it. The reason we're talking about World War II, as the last caller said, as he stated eloquently, is history is repeating itself.
Yeah, it is. It sure is.
The rallies of the Nazi Party in the United States, in our most coveted establishments like Washington, D.C. and New York City, are testament that our own freedoms are being used against us under the guise of a anti-war, but it's not anti-war protest. It's anti-West, anti-democracy.
Yes.
Pro-Hamas, pro-dictators, pro-fascist, pro-terrorism, anti-religion. They're also anti-Christian. Does anybody realize that? There are no Christians in the Middle East countries. Okay, so there's some, benign monarchies out there, benevolent monarchies, Jordan, Egypt, perhaps Saudi Arabia to some extent. It's great that they're coming on board because they feel that embracing the values of the West, regardless if it is not implemented perfectly, is the best pathway forward for the world, the West, and the Arabs alike. And that's why the Abraham Accords are holding. And that's why people are comparing what happened. Let me remind Bob about the Battle of Britain. When Germany was trying to, after they conquered Paris and they were sending their Luftwaffe over there to Britain and bombing them, some of the bombs hit London and started major fires over there and killed civilians, Bob. They didn't care. And then when the British responded, right, in kind, oh, well, you're killing civilians. Well, I'm sorry. I'm glad the West won that battle, because we would have all been doing the goose step, and many of us would have been slaughtered.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be here
right.
today.
That's right. Yeah, I agree.
Remember the buzz bombs, the indiscriminate buzz bombs?
Yeah.
I think they were the V1 version. Off of the rails, they'd shoot them from Paris, and then when they ran out of fuel, the buzzing would stop, and then it would just, explode when it contacted the ground indiscriminately.
Yeah.
You see, it's great that we have the internet, because not only do we get the propaganda, but we also get the unfiltered pictures a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it's very simple to type in Boone rallies. It's very simple to type in buzz bombs. To the point about the Japanese, there was almost a Japanese military coup to not stop. They didn't want to stop the war, a lot of the military generals, and they tried to take out the emperor, because they knew if he recorded and got his recording out to tell the public to stand down, they would stand down, because they regarded him as a god.
Yeah, yeah.
To all the people that have these feelings that we shouldn't kill civilians. Well, we're not killing civilians indiscriminately and on purpose, and it is not a collective punishment. Look, if you're a civilian working in a munitions factory, or you're a farmer and you're supplying food to the soldiers, you're an enemy combatant. No two ways about it. If you're a military engineer like myself and you're supporting the war effort, you're a military target.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a population that work in this, and there was a famous movie, The Great Escape, right?
I remember it.
Yeah, you remember it. You remember the scene where Richard Attenborough gets captured, and he's talking to he's Big X, and he's talking to the British prisoner of war commander, and he says, you talk about the Luftwaffe, the Nazis, as if they're different. They're all the same. We're fighting a whole bloody lot. We have to win this war.
Yeah.
Right? If the Luftwaffe wanted Hitler out, why didn't they take him out prior to him getting into power?
Yeah, that's right.
So, when look, I don't get my history from the movie reels, but there's a lot of truth to some of the movies that are out there from the post World War II days. And if you want to just, it doesn't take much to really understand history these days, given the fact that all of the historical records are pretty much online, and all you have to do is type in a few key words that you perhaps heard, and then you can drill into the detail as you see fit for yourself. But to bring it home round robin, what's happening in Israel definitely has many parallels with World War II,
yes,
and that's why we're talking about. And by the way, Ukraine has the same parallels.
Yes,
Russia is no angel. They had the Gulag
that's for sure.
in the 30s. They still have statues of Stalin all over the place over there.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that Russia is like we have to learn to tolerate each other, the West and these, I call them the axis of evil. That who was it? Reagan said that, or
yes.
Bush, or one of the presidents. North Korea, Iran, China, Russia. These countries are pariahs. They don't follow the four freedoms.
Yeah, they don't. No, they don't.
And I don't know how to push back with these people that think this way. And we can't even give them an inch and say, well, maybe we shouldn't have bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima. We killed innocent. You can't say that. You can't, even if you're thinking it, you can't say it, because it gives them room to propagandize our own war effort to stop this insanity that people don't have individual rights and that you have to fall in line with these dictators. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Thanks for the call. Well, Bob, see what you started? Bob and Cape May. Bob, you really started something here.
Well, actually, Seth started the with the topic. So anyway, we can blame Seth.
All right.
Look, John, Steve, and Chuck. Okay. Look, fellas, you have to understand history a little better. Okay. This idea of a mindset. Okay. It just doesn't make sense to me, particularly when you talk about what happened in the last century. Now, the First World War, I think it was Chuck that mentioned the Germans started two wars. Well, Look, the reality is, World War II, arose from the First World War. That's the reality. And First World War, there was no good or bad country in the First World War. This was an absolute blunder on all the countries of Europe. It was a totally unnecessary war, totally unnecessary. And I listened, the point I'm making here is there was a talk show host I used to listen to out of Philadelphia. You probably remember Irv Homer.
Oh, yeah.
Irv
know
was
him well.
A brilliant guy. He was a brilliant guy, John.
Yes, he was.
Irv was Jewish, a very brilliant guy. And Irv said this on his radio show. He said, I often wonder why the most intelligent and productive people on the European continent could embrace a madman like Hitler. And then I read the terms of the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War II. Then I understood why. The German people had two choices. They had a choice between democracy and fascism. Neither was a good choice. And I'm sorry, they had a choice between democracy and communism. All right? The terms of the Treaty of Versailles were so drastic, so harsh, that a democratic form of government could not work economically. And there was a democracy in Germany after World War I, and it was, the economy was in shatters. It took a wheelbarrow of marks to buy a loaf of bread. That is accurate, and that's why the reason Hitler came to power was because of the Treaty of Versailles.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Well, I remember that from my history lessons.
Right. And it wasn't a mindset that was terrible, that wanted war, that wanted to kill people. That wasn't it. It was either embrace communism, embrace the worst mass killer of the 20th century, fellas, okay? It was not Hitler. It was Stalin by a long shot. It's not that we are so good that the Western democracies fell in bed. England and France and the United States. We fell in bed. We went to bed with the worst mass murderer of the 20th century, and that was Joe Stalin. So, this idea that we had the complete moral high ground in World War II, we went, Stalin, and we knew this before the war started. We knew Stalin had already killed tens of millions of people by 1939, 1940, right? So again, it's not all that simple. It's, history is very nuanced. You need to think a little deeper, and again, the Japanese, I'll give you another example, John. The Japanese, did they necessarily want to go to war with the United States? I mean, that's what we think, and that's what the history that we are normally subjected to says. But let me tell you, before the Japanese attacked, what did we do? The U.S. engaged in an 8-step process to provoke Japan into war. And the key factor in this, we cut off their oil. Not only did we, but the English cut off the oil. The Dutch East Indies cut off their oil. They had no oil. That was death for Japan.
Yeah.
Right? So
I didn't know that.
Did you realize that?
I didn't know that. No. You're telling me something I didn't know.
Well, no. Again, it was a horrible sneak attack. Yes, it was. But there's also evidence, believe it or not, on Pearl Harbor. It's a book called Day of Deceit. It's written by a 20-year Navy man. It's very hard evidence that FDR knew the attack was coming. That Admiral Kimmel and General Short, who were the commanders on that island, were the patsies. They were not given this information that the Japanese armada was sailing toward Pearl Harbor. There's all sorts of evidence. Admiral Kimmel on Pearl Harbor had naval exercises for late November. He was engaging in them. Naval maneuvers all to the north of Oahu. Okay, those maneuvers would have caught the Japanese fleet coming. What happened? Maneuvers were called off by Washington. They were ordered to take planes to Wake Island. More evidence, John.
Oh, man.
A few weeks prior to Pearl Harbor, our Navy issued a vacancy order for all American shipping, all commercial merchant shipping in the Northern Pacific. It was a vacancy order. You could not sail there. Why? Because they did not want the Japanese armada to be identified by our merchant seamen.
Wow.
Okay.
Boy.
Another point here. All the relics, World War I relics, they were there to get bombed in Pearl Harbor. But the modern carriers, they were not at port when the Japanese attacked.
So
not there.
That leads you to believe that they knew something was up.
Well, there was more to that. It was acknowledged that we had broken the Japanese code before Pearl Harbor. This was acknowledged by all historians.
Boy, fascinating.
Fascinating. We'd broken their diplomatic code, not their military code.
Okay.
However, there's strong evidence now that we also broke their military code, that we knew it was coming, and Roosevelt would not tell the commanders because he wanted the American public to get involved in the Second World War because we had a very strong anti-war. It was America First movement. That's what it was called. The Americans did not want to get involved in European wars again.
Oh,
and Roosevelt campaigned in 1940 saying, we are not going to get involved in Europe's wars. At the same time, he was colluding with Churchill to get us involved in the Second World War.
Boy.
And again, there were two murderous psychopaths involved in the Second World War in Europe. The people who headed the America First movement, like Herbert Hoover, they were advocating for letting Stalin and Hitler just beat the hell out of each other, and then the Western democracies would have been in a stronger position. After the Second World War, Stalin was the big victor. We weren't the big victors of the Second World War. It was Stalin. He was communism.
A fascinating history lesson, Bob, and thanks for the call. Boy, I was mesmerized in that call. Just unbelievable. What we are learning today, which Seth and Bob started way back at the 9:15. Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. We'll talk to John after the break, and maybe we'll talk to you at 609-407-1450. We're coming back with more Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
The finest fresh fruit and produce you'll find anywhere? Check. Award-winning gift baskets and fruit baskets? Check. Baked goods and prepared foods? Check. They check all the boxes. B.F. Mazzio, 601 New Road, Northfield. And that's not all. Gourmet items, specialty foods, and catering for all occasions. It's all right there. Check them out online at bfmazzio.com. That's bfmazzio.com. B.F. Mazzio, 601 New Road, Northfield.
Your WPG Talk Radio 95.5 AccuWeather forecast for South Jersey. Some sun this afternoon, then turning cloudy. A big warm-up's on the way, high up to 60. Mostly cloudy tonight, low 49. Real nice tomorrow with sun and clouds, high up to 81 to wrap the weekend. When you get back at it, Monday's going to be partly sunny, very warm and humid, high 89. A thunderstorm late Tuesday afternoon coming our way with a high 85. I'm AccuWeather's Ruth O'Brien on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose. Don't forget, if you miss any of today's show, tomorrow we are replayed 5 until 7. It's kind of a conglomeration of the best of. It's our 3-hour show condensed into 2. 5 until 7 tomorrow, Sunday. Talk with a Purpose replay right here on WPG Talk Radio 95.5. 609-407-1450 is our number here in the studio. We'll get to John in just a moment. I wanted to mention, did you see where Harvey Weinstein's 2020 rape conviction was overturned?
Let's see here.
After all of that, New York Supreme Court overturned the conviction Thursday, saying that the trial judge had improperly allowed testimony against the ex-movie mogul based on allegations that weren't part of the case. Well, that's legal 101. How'd that get in there? However, Weinstein will remain in prison because he was convicted in Los Angeles in 2022 of another rape. This was based on an illegal technicality and does not exonerate him. So, good news for all the Me Too people out there. Oh, you thought Harvey Weinstein was getting off? No, he's still in jail. So, don't fret about that. Let's go back to the phones. John in Ocean City. John is back. Good morning, John.
Yes, good morning. You have to take into account, too, that 2 years before the bombing of Pearl Harbor, circa December 7th, 1941, you had the Gleavage Tower incident, which was a false flag that got us involved in World War II. That happened when Hitler blitzkrieged into Poland, and that was September 1st, 1939, I believe. So then you had Operation Barbarossa, where the Russians were attacked by the Germans. That was June 21st, 1941. You already had the rape of Nanking. You already had the Japanese aggression in Manchuria, so the world was on high alert. World War II has already been fought. I can't choose the right word, but anyway, World War II had already been in effect since September 1st, 1939. So we were on high alert. Now, they didn't know that there were Japanese aircraft carriers, Japanese Imperial Fleet aircraft carriers 200 miles off of the coast of Oahu, where Pearl Harbor is. What they didn't know? Well, radar wasn't developed. It has nothing to do with nothing, actually. You know, as far as us not wanting to get into war, us not wanting our sons and daughters to come back in body bags, okay? That's constitutional. That's not anti-constitutional. There's a 5-step process to go to war. Both institutions of Congress have to be on board, the House of Representatives and the Senate. Then the military is brought in, and then it will be determined what branches of government or branches of the military are to be used. So in World War II, all branches were used: Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Army. Okay, and understand that the fifth part of declaration of war is the public. Both houses of Congress have to be on board. The military has to be on board. But most important, per Constitution of our founding fathers, is the public. It's the public who are going to lose their sons and daughters. So they have to be on board too. They can't just say, "Well, we declared war. That's tough doo-doo, and your kids are going to come back dead." That's disgraceful. We've gone in the wrong direction anyway. And this is from President Eisenhower in his 1961 farewell speech. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. So that, it wasn't peaches and cream after he made that speech. He knew a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes. And that's what it is. A lot of stuff's going on behind the scenes, and we're just waking up now. Well, it is time to wake up because this is a bunch of malarkey. I mean, we've been lied to again and again and again. Well, when are we going to wake up and realize we've been lied to? And Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the most Christian populated cities in Japan. Why were they picked? It's a disgrace, man. I'll tell you. Dresden's a disgrace. What happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki are a disgrace. There's just no way around it. And it was Curtis LeMay, who actually was stationed in the Pacific Theater of World War II, who said there was no need to drop those bombs because Japan had already been beaten down. So I'm going to take the word of General Eisenhower and General MacArthur and General Curtis LeMay that we didn't need to drop those bombs, man. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the call. William in AC. William, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
John, I think to hear all these historians lay out the history of World War II, and some of them are fortunate enough to be old, to see some of it, or at least their fathers, from their father's standpoint.
Yeah.
But I want to ask. I just have one question today, and it's, after having that knowledge that you bring to the table about him, and I don't mean you, John, I'm talking about your listeners.
Yes.
The history that they can bring forward about World War II, how can they sit back and let the Congress that they support go off in this Putin-loving situation that's going on in the U.S. Congress on the Republican side, and they don't have a word to say. It's just fine with them. Now, the chairman, the Republican chairman of the Intelligence Committee, I think his last name is Representative Turner, said that too often his party are regurgitating Putin's rhetoric on the floor of the U.S. Congress, and I don't hear these people ever saying anything about it. They just, what kind of future are you willing to defend? You talk about your father and your uncles and whatever, but yet you let not your congressman, but you let the party that you represent, you let them sit right in the House of Congress and just read right out of Putin's handbook, and you got nothing to say. That's the only question. But, I would like to get a little bit into Israel, too.
Go ahead.
But I don't want to overstep my...
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But, Netanyahu has the same problem that Donald Trump has. He has to take over the government to keep from going to jail. And, and you say it's the gentleman said it's a battle for the survival. Yeah, it's a battle for the survival of Netanyahu and not of the Israeli people. Yeah, Israel was attacked October the 7th. But we're finding out, and the Israeli people know it, and these kids at these colleges, they understand it too, that Netanyahu is just as responsible for that attack, because he's using it in order to keep himself out of prison, him and his wife, because they stole everything. They lied to everybody. And as soon as this, I don't know, so now they're going to want to, anyway, hey, listen, John, let me get off of here,
Well, you're on a roll, William. I mean, you, is he off? Yeah. Okay. Well, he was telling it like it is. Steve in Absecon Island, hold on. We're going to take you, if you can hang on, because I have a feeling you have a lot more to say. And what do we have? 3 minutes? 2 minutes? 3? Okay. Well, we'll just fill in the 3 minutes here, and then we'll start the 11 o'clock hour with Steve. All right. 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. I am amazed at how the direction of the show has been taken today because, well, sure, we started off by saying history repeats itself, and it is certainly doing that with protests on college campuses, which reminded me of the 60s. And here we go again with protests. And I'm just really, this is what I'm concerned about. If the students are there to learn, and they're there specifically for that reason, they're there to learn and to better themselves and to have a good education so they can go out into the world and become productive citizens, then what are they learning? Are they learning to fight other wars? Are they learning to be on, Israel's side or Gaza's side or Palestine's side? I mean, it's their war. And I understand that we can have a say in it or we can give our opinions, but it's their war. It's not ours. And what the kids are, and I mean, if it was my kid, I said this before, I'd pull them out of school. Because, college is not cheap today. In my day, they were protesting, so what? So you missed a year of school. So what did it cost you? $1,000? It's way more than that now. Like $67,000 for Columbia? So I just don't understand all of this about Gaza and Israel, but we will continue in the third hour. Oh, it's been lively, I'll tell you that. Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. Hour number 2 is rapidly coming to a close. In fact, it's in the books. And hour number 3 is coming up. More fireworks here on the show. Don't go away.
WPGG Atlantic City, WENJ HD3 Millville, a Town Square media station. Everything you need to know in 6 minutes starts now. WPG Talk Radio 95.5 presents Talk with a Purpose. Join the conversation by calling 609-407-1450. Now the host of Talk with a Purpose, John DeMasi.
Did she say 90 for Monday? 90? Oh man, this morning the heat was on. Oh well, look, it's springtime, right? Hour number 3, Talk with a Purpose, every Saturday 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. Good to have you with us. Another lively hour. If it's anything like the first two, it's really going to be a barn burner. Oh, 609-407-1450. That's our number here in the studio. Did we want to talk about something else? Here's related before we get to the calls. We have Steve, Frank, Greg, and John. We'll get to them in a minute. We were talking about the campus unrest revolving around Palestine, Gaza, and the Israeli war. Now we find that the University of Pennsylvania, this is another one where there's a lot of protests, they effectively have banned from campus a group called Penn Against the Occupation. This is a pro-Palestinian group. They have revoked their status as a registered student organization. And they say this group has failed to comply with policies that govern student organizations at Penn, despite repeated efforts to engage with the group and provide opportunities to resolve noncompliance. This is according to a Penn spokesperson. And meantime, of course, at the University of Columbia, Columbia University, students pitched tents on the campus last week. We all know about that. We all know about Robert Kraft. So, but somebody's taking action, not the president of Columbia University. Somebody is. So, thankfully for that, let's go back to the phone. Steve in Absecon Island. Steve, welcome back.
3 times the charm, John. This program's good for advertising, no doubt about that.
Yes, it is.
Look, I have to push back once again with Bob. He doesn't. When he makes a statement that we have to be more well versed in history about some of our callers, I'm paraphrasing what he said. I take a little bit. I take that.
Offensively,
yeah. But I don't know Bob, and he sounds. I agree with him on tax policy 100%. But I have to push back because I read books. Margaret Macmillan, the great granddaughter of David Lloyd George and Prime Minister of Britain at the time, and she wrote a history of Paris 1919, the Treaty of Versailles. I read the book twice, and I pulled out a page that I had bookmarked. She said, real quickly, if Germany had been more thoroughly defeated, things might have been different. It was an armistice, and no fighting on the German soil occurred. I agree with Bob that the Treaty of Versailles was a potent and popular theme during Hitler's rise to power. But she goes on, and Macmillan corrects the widely held view that the reparation payments imposed by the Allies were so onerous as to have caused the wreck of the German economy. Germany hardly made any reparation payments. There were so many other causes to the rise of Hitler, and to simplify that the Treaty of Versailles and the reparations caused Hitler to power. There was eugenics in his mind, and that an Aryan race was far better than anybody else. And, the comparison between, if they had a choice between communism and National Socialism, they picked National Socialism. It wasn't, they were a democracy right up until Hitler took over. So with that said, disagree with him about the Treaty of Versailles, disagree with him about the firebombing of Dresden, disagree with him about dropping the bombs on Hiroshima. Once again, the moral imperative is to win the war, protect our soldiers, protect our civilians, and protect our resources in our country. And then you have to hope that a democracy returns once all the fighting has ended. And you have to hope that the side that wins will be the moral high ground. The thought when he said, if the Nazis won, there would have been war crimes against Churchill and FDR, for that matter. That's absurd when he stated that. So I push back on that once again.
Yeah, I push back on that too.
I heard you, and I'm glad you did.
Yeah,
because and I understand. Look, I understand. Bob had family there, and well,
so did I.
He helped.
So did I.
He helped the Jewish family. I said that I'm glad we need more families like his in these places. We need more Palestinians to protect Jews and Christians and to stand up for freedom of speech. But it's not happening because 70% of that population through the polls want to have Hamas and they want to have dictators. And yeah, they want to eat and they want to have a family and they want to have a roof over their head. That's, the basic, simplistic things that people want. Once again, I say this, and I point to the movies, The Great Escape. I love how Richard Attenborough said, I have to point out one thing to you, Roger. No matter how unsatisfactory this camp may be, the high command have still left us in the hands of the Luftwaffe, not the Gestapo and the SS. And then Bartlett, Big X, says, that's Richard Attenborough, he says, look, sir, you talk about the high command and the Luftwaffe, and then you talk about the Gestapo and the SS. To me, they're the same. We're fighting the whole bloody lot. There's only one way to put it, sir. They are the common enemies of everyone who believes in freedom. If the high command didn't approve of Hitler, then why didn't they throw him out? What does that have to do with Palestine? If the people of Palestine didn't want Hamas, they would have thrown them out.
Right.
That's the point.
That's right.
That's why you're having this diatribe over with World War II, because the parallelisms are there and the people see it. It's still fresh in our memories because even though the World War II generation is dying off in the hundreds every day, the people, the baby boomers, had uncles and relatives
Yes,
and
that's right.
fathers still there, and we have their victory letters, as I read in the previous call.
Yes.
June 1945, and my uncle says, "I'm sweating it out. We're waiting to be deployed to the Pacific. I hope I never have to go through this horror again." Thank God they dropped the bomb. Better them than us.
That's right.
Said it.
That's
Better
right.
to kill those Nazi bastards than to kill our own soldiers. He said, shed their blood, not ours.
right.
And I don't care if a civilian gets in the way or not. I don't care. I want us to survive so that we can have the freedoms in this country when we get back to normalcy, as we have done historically over all the wars that America has been to.
That's right. Well said.
That's all I want to say on this matter.
Well, that's well said, Steve. Thanks for the call. And now here's our favorite whipping boy, Frank in Ventnor.
Frank. I can't get a day of relaxation, John. What's going on?
I mean, you didn't do anything, and then you were brought up. So, hey,
exactly. All I'll say to John, and then maybe we'll finish this. If he wants to believe obscure gossip sites, that's where he gets his truth. I hope that works out well for him. John, on World War II, I just want to mention one of the what we decided to do after World War II. We decided not to charge the Emperor Hirohito with war crimes.
Yes,
and that worked out very well for us. The occupation and reconstruction of Japan went very well because the people respected that. They did see their emperor as a god. And we had it was all right. We could have charged him with a war criminal. We probably could have executed him. But the Japanese people respected that we didn't do that. And now they're one of our strongest allies. So that part did work out after World War II.
Yes.
And, John, the third thing, if I have time, I want to bring up something that's a little more topical, I guess. Well, no, that's topical too, but this is something going on. I think it's going to be interesting next week to see if Marjorie Taylor Greene follows through with her threat to try to remove Speaker Johnson from his role as Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
She threatened to do this.
Yeah.
And she only needs, technically, she has 3 people now, including herself, that will agree to try to vote him out. Now, in order to vote him out, though, she'll need all Democrats voting with her also.
Yes.
So she only needs a couple of Republicans and then all the Democrats. And I don't think she's going to get it. I think this is going to be, she had her day in the sun. I think she's going to be rejected next week. And it will be interesting to see, how she talk her way out of this. She made all these threats, and I just don't think the Republicans want to go through that chaos again. Remember after McCarthy was removed, John?
Yes, yeah.
We had all that.
Oh.
Now the Democrats, they may want to, they could throw the Republicans into turmoil by voting along with Marjorie I can't remember her name.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah.
Yeah. If they all vote with her, they could also throw, they could help her throw the Republicans into chaos again for another few weeks. But it looks like probably at least a few Democrats will resist doing that, and I hopefully we won't have that turmoil and chaos that we saw.
I hope not. We'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
We'll see.
Yes. Thanks,
all right,
Frank. Thank you. Thanks for the call. Greg in Absecon. Greg is back. Greg, good morning. Welcome back.
This is Matthew. Good morning. Just a little background. The Vietnam War. The worst aspect that I remember is the way we treated the soldiers when they were coming back.
Oh, my God, yes.
In this country.
Oh, my God. That was the most, it was horrible. Horrible.
It was. And people didn't realize we were in the draft. These kids didn't have a choice.
That's right. That's right. You're
And
absolutely right.
It was a disgrace. The most current war we're fighting. People won't look at it as such, but the Democrats and the Republicans are having a fine war. The Republicans are fighting the Republicans. The Democrats are fighting between the Republicans and the Democrats. And who's winning? I would say the Democrats at this point.
Yeah.
And they're
I
being
agree.
led by a president? Is that what he's currently a president?
Yeah.
Is that what you call him? Mr. Tunnel Vision? And then this little band of soldiers, a Damassi. Oh, no. I'm sorry. A Schumer and a Pelosi.
Yeah.
These people. It's going to be a funny outcome, and we can solve it all the next election.
That's right. And I hope we do.
Work at it.
I hope we do. We just have to. There's no question. We have to win this election. There's no question about it. I should say Trump has to win the election. But Greg, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 609-407-1450. That's the number here in the studio. We have John on the line. He'll bring in another 2 cents worth. Maybe we'll have you. A couple of open lines at 609-407-1450. We have more to talk about here. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Trump and other things to talk about here on the show. Talk with a Purpose, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. I'm John DeMasi. We're coming back. More Talk with a Purpose in just a moment.
If you're interested in driving one of the finest automobiles on the market today, then you'll want to check out all of the fabulous new and pre-owned Lexus at Lexus of Atlantic City. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Driving a Lexus is like no other vehicle on the market. Test drive one for yourself at Lexus of Atlantic City. Whether it's new or pre-owned, you'll be more than satisfied. In fact, Lexus is consistently #1 when it comes to customer satisfaction. Visit Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. Or you can check out their outstanding selection of new, pre-owned, and L-certified pre-owned vehicles on their website, LexusOfAtlanticCity.com. That's LexusOfAtlanticCity.com. Or if you want more information, call 609-641-0008. Lexus of Atlantic City, now celebrating their 26th year in the area. A dealership that you'll enjoy. No pressure, no gimmicks, no hassle, no hype. Lexus of Atlantic City, 3169 Fire Road in EHT. And remember, always online at LexusOfAtlanticCity.com.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose, 609-407-1450. Don't forget, if you want to listen to any of our shows at any time, you can. All you do is Google John DeMasi Podcasts, and all the shows come up. I think we are up to about 210 shows or so, give or take. Well, what's the difference? Google John DeMasi Podcasts, and you will see all the shows come up. Talk with a Purpose is the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. John is back. John in Ocean City. Good morning. Welcome back, John.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. There is no easy answer to anything, really, because people say, well, the Ashkenazi Jews that founded modern-day Israel, they shouldn't be there because they're not real Jews. Well, Jews have been in diaspora since being taken captivity into Babylon. That goes way, way back. And you have the Sephardim of the East, which are Asian Jews, and you have the Sephardim of the West, which are Portuguese and Spanish. Then you got the Falasha Jews of Ethiopia, they're black. And they all have a home in Israel now. Most Falashas are in Israel now. There was never a whole lot of them anyway, but they have a home in Israel because, and actually it's going to be the building of the temple that will be the last week of Daniel will be fulfilled, and that's when Messiah comes back and puts an end to all this mishigas, all this craziness, yeah? So it's actually they are. I've heard that the underground of the tunnel of the temple's already been built, and what I understand is it's not going to be Al-Aqsa Mosque is not going to be plowed over, but it's going to be too close for comfort. In other words, you walk out of the mosque and there's the wall of the temple right in your face. That's what many say it's going to be like So we're this craziness is going to go on and on and on and on and on, and it's good not to get the chase red herrings, man. You know what I mean? Because I never said there wasn't powerful Jews in the Illuminati. There are, but that doesn't make it a Jewish conspiracy. Now there's more Gentiles in the Illuminati than there are Jews, and the Illuminati never went out of business. I'm sorry, I'm a sky pilot. I'm not just a member of the conspiratorium. I'm also a sky pilot too. You know, what are you going to do? But it was Roosevelt's Communist Manifesto. It was Clinton Roosevelt. It was written by Emanuel Mann Josephson. And by the by, Clinton Roosevelt did not have a drop of Jewish blood in his veins, and he hated the Constitution and had Karl Marx. He could have sued Karl Marx for his Communist Manifesto of 1848 because the science of government based on natural law, written by Clinton Roosevelt, are identical to each other. Illuminism has been here. I like the story about the rich man who had chestnuts roasting over his fire pit, and he had a monkey and a cat, and the monkey got clever, and he took the cat, he grabbed the cat by its neck, and on impulse the cat grabbed the chestnuts. He ate the chestnuts. When the man came back in to see that his chestnuts had been eaten, he checked the paws. The paws of the monkey were not burned, but the paws of the cats were, so he beat the hell out of the cat. So actually, America, we've been used, we've been the whipping boy. We've been taking the blame for a lot of stuff that we really aren't responsible for. And yeah, it's going to have to be a we the people revolution. It's going to have to be Jewish, Catholic, Protestant, black, white, tall, short. We the people. We need to take our country back even now. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the call. 609-407-1450. We'll get back to the calls in a moment. Just wanted to mention, looks like Donald Trump may get what he wants. The Supreme Court on Thursday appeared likely to reject former President Trump's claim of absolute immunity from prosecution over election interference. But here's where he may get what he wants. Several justices signaled reservations about the charges that could cause a lengthy delay, possibly beyond November's election. So if they put off these trials to after the election, I think that's a win for Trump. Because who wants a trial in the middle of an election campaign? I know the Democrats are for it. Of course, but so we'll see. It looks like he may get what he wants. And we'll get to some other Trump news. But first, one of our favorite callers, David in California. David, good morning. Welcome.
Oh, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm glad you raised the Supreme Court immunity case. You remember, immunity means you are basically asking for the get-out-of-jail-free card. Immunity pretty much implies that you're guilty and that you're trying to say, oh, well, you can't prosecute me even if I did it. And so he's basically pled guilty to all four charges, that he stole our stuff and hid them down in Mar-a-Lago, that he was trying to weasel 12,000 votes out of the Secretary of State of Georgia, that he did cheat New York out of their taxes, that he did rape that woman and slander her, but that he's immune from prosecution, so don't even bother trying. Now, if I think about 1776, and my old great-great-great-great-great-grandpappy John Hart of New Jersey, would he think that as a founding father, he would allow a guy to pretend that if he became president, he could get away with anything? That 1776 was all about letting Donald Trump get away with anything?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think so. No, I don't either. I mean, Donald Trump was not a gleam in anybody's eye in 1776.
Well, the idea that a New York con artist would be able to be elevated to president. You know, he claimed that he was such a good manager of property, real estate manager, that he could manage America's property as a property developer just fine. Well, it kind of proves that he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know. Penthouse boy knows how to manage forests. Tell him to go rake the forest. That he would actually deny aid in the middle of an epidemic, in the middle of wildfires, in the middle of storms and tornadoes, that he would deny areas of the country aid and comfort after a disaster.
Who did he deny?
No,
who did he deny, David?
Beg pardon?
Who did he deny?
Oh, well, it was clear right in the beginning of COVID. He said, New York and Los Angeles, they're blue cities. Let's cut them off. Let's not give them any aid. And he did. And he was trying to offload a boatload of sick cruise liners into San Francisco Bay until we caught him. We would have been one of the worst infected cities or regions if all of those sick people had been allowed to get off those cruise liners.
How'd that work out for San Francisco, though? What is it now?
We caught them, and we caught them.
But it's still it's still a toilet now, David. I mean, how is it any better now? It isn't even any better. Have you seen pictures of San Francisco? No. Thanks to Gavin Newsom and thanks to the Democratic establishment that's running this country. You always have revisionist history, David. Thanks for the call. I don't want to get my blood pressure up before 12 o'clock. I mean, just everything with David it's Trump's fault. Do you know it's going to be 90 on Monday? It's Trump's fault. I can't get over it. How do you follow that, Bob and Cape May?
Well, we gotta love David. I mean, he unites us all, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. He does.
Hey, so real quick, John, on this idea that the Treaty of Versailles was so benign, okay, that the Treaty of Versailles wasn't the central role in bringing Hitler to power. And look, I respect Steve. Steve's a good guy, and I think I was out of line in saying that he doesn't know history. But I do want to make the point here about the Treaty of Versailles. And look, Germany's economy prior to World War I was the strongest economy in Europe. Germany was going to be the predominant power in Europe prior to World War I. And there's a lot of reason to believe that's why World War I was fought, because the British, they didn't want to be number two. Now, what happened? After the Second World War, Germany's economy, again, became the greatest economy in Europe. The miracle, thanks to the Marshall Plan, thanks to peace terms that West Germany had, that were not vengeful, that wouldn't destroy their economy, that gave those people a chance to rebuild. After First World War, that didn't happen. You cannot dispute the fact that inflation destroyed the German economy, and it was very much tied to the harsh terms of the Treaty of Versailles. That's indisputable historical fact. Okay? So, again, if Versailles was so benign, then why did the best economy in Europe turn out to be an absolute basket case after Versailles? And then when peace terms were imposed that were not harsh on West Germany, why did that economy become the strongest economy in Europe again? So you have to say the Treaty of Versailles was the central reason in destroying that economy and creating a climate where somebody like Hitler could come to power. So that's a point I want to make there. And then, look, this whole debate that we had this morning is about collective guilt and using collective guilt to justify the killing of innocent, non-combatant civilians. And I think it's wrong. Okay? And that's the big point that I wanted to make. I think it's wrong. Okay.
But if you're in a war, Bob, what's the goal?
John, if you're in a war, then do your best. Do your best. And yes, innocent people do get killed in war. I grant that point. But do your best to try to limit those deaths, and I don't think we did that. When the U.S. High Command, when Roosevelt, when Churchill, when they gave the okay to firebomb Dresden, they weren't doing their best to keep innocent people from being burned alive. And the same goes with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think we could have done something different. That's the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, well,
and you know that's just the point I wanted to make. There was a lot of horrible things happen in World War II. It was the worst calamity in history, and we do have to acknowledge this, John. The victors got to write the history of the war.
Yeah.
The losers didn't. And point, look, there were 15 million ethnic Germans living in Eastern Europe, meaning Germans that were not living in Germany. There were the Volga Germans. There were 2 million of them in Russia. And after the communists came to power, they were so productive that not even the communists, not even Stalin went after them. But after the Second World War, it was the greatest ethnic cleansing in history. Yet we have nothing written about that in our history books. 2 million of these people were killed. There was systematic rape that the Soviet army was authorized to do by Stalin. I mean, on a massive scale. Rape and murder through Eastern Europe. We don't really hear anything about that.
No.
In Russia, they still sell chocolate bars and all sorts of memorabilia with Stalin. Okay, so again, the victors wrote the war, and again, point I'm making is it's not all black and white. It's not all right and wrong. There were atrocities on both sides. That's the point I'm making.
Bob, thank you. Thank you for your contribution. And you started this. That's okay. I mean, and yesterday I was saying, boy, I'm short of a few topics today. Right. Yeah. Well, hey, thank you, Bob. Thanks again. Made my job a lot easier today. 609-407-1450. Boy, this is rare. Open lines. 609-407-1450. Talk for the purposes of the show, Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. We still have time to get into some more lively discussions. All right? 25 minutes. Come on. We can get a lot in. Talking about the Trump trial involving the hush money and Stormy Daniels. This, I think, is the most ridiculous of the Trump trials. And here's a ridiculous turn. The key witness in this case is, believe it or not, former National Enquirer editor David Pecker. Pecker supposedly helped Trump out by squashing many stories about Trump that were unflattering. Now, he paid some people to do that. And you know what I want? Here's what I want. Maybe we'll do this exercise now for the next 25 minutes. I want you to think of a headline that you saw in the National Enquirer. You didn't buy the paper. I mean, do anybody buy that paper? I mean, people like my cousin buy that. I don't buy it. Can you think of a ridiculous headline that you have read in the supermarket checkout line for the National Enquirer? Like Elvis found working at the 7-Eleven in Seattle. Or something else. Aliens discovered in downtown Chicago. Those are the headlines. And this is what we're hanging our hat on in Trump's trial? But really, this is the most ridiculous of all the Trump trials, because he supposedly falsified records to cover up paying hush money to a porn star. Do you know how many businesses falsify records? I have dealt with many businesses in my career, and I mean a lot. And one of the things that I have found is a common theme. The bookkeeper made a mistake. The bookkeeper diverted money. The bookkeeper stole money. The bookkeeper made a mistake. All of those. And to say that Trump, he did this? I mean, he falsified records?
Thank you.
I mean, all of the businesses all do that. Not that it makes it right, but they all do it, and I've seen it. I've witnessed it, and I've seen a couple of bookkeepers go to jail. So, I don't know. It just boggles my mind that they can make a trial out of this.
Thank you.
This is really, I just can't believe it. 609-407-1450. We're going to come back with I guess a full line of calls. Oh, well. 609-407-1450. I'm John DeMasi. More Talk with a Purpose after these words.
The finest fresh fruit and produce you'll find anywhere? Check. Award-winning gift baskets and fruit baskets? Check. Baked goods and prepared foods? Check. They check all the boxes. B.F. Mazzio, 601 New Road, Northfield. And that's not all. Gourmet items, specialty foods, and catering for all occasions. It's all right there. Check them out online at bfmazzio.com. That's bfmazzio.com. B.F. Mazzio, 601 New Road, Northfield.
Your WPG Talk Radio 95.5 AccuWeather forecast for South Jersey. Some sun this afternoon, then turning cloudy. A big warm-up's on the way, high up to 60. Mostly cloudy tonight, low 49. Real nice tomorrow with sun and clouds, high up to 81 to wrap the weekend. When you get back at it, Monday's going to be partly sunny, very warm and humid, high 89. A thunderstorm late Tuesday afternoon coming our way with a high 85. I'm AccuWeather's Ruth O'Brien on WPG Talk Radio 95.5.
Back here on Talk with a Purpose. We'll get back to the calls in just a moment. 609-407-1450. I wanted to give you an update on this lawsuit filed by 8 shore towns. And I really don't believe this. The lawsuit was against the Atlantic Shores offshore wind project, and it was dismissed in court Thursday due to a lack of standing. We talked about this with Denny Levinson last week. This was for a lack of standing for homeowners and municipalities. This is an outrage and one of the most egregious decisions I could ever think of. How can you say that homeowners and residents of Brigantine, of which I am one, and then Barnegat Light, Beach Haven, Harvey Cedars, Long Beach Township, Ship Bottom, Surf City, and Ventnor have no standing? The project review was to determine whether the 200-plus wind turbines standing at, you ready for this? And we've said this before, 1,048 feet. That is almost as high as the Empire State Building. This was to determine whether the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's coastal regulations were violated. Now, if these don't violate, I don't know what does. According to Lance Landgraf, he's the mayor of Ventnor, he said, "We are disappointed that a judge would think that the residents of the community most impacted by the wind project would have no standing in a manner that will impact our lives, our economy, and our environment. True. Stay tuned for more fighting. Imagine that as high as the Empire State Building. You think you're going to see them from 9 miles out? You better believe it. Oh, boy. It never ends. Michael in Egg Harbor City. Michael, good morning. Welcome.
Hello, John. Thank you for taking my call. I would just like to thank the previous callers for a history lesson. I'd like to get into the craziness on our campus is living proof that the indoctrination of the Department of Education has been going on for over 50 years.
That's right.
It's now at our feet.
That's right.
And I'd just like to make a comment on why they're protesting and free Hamas and whatnot, and just to take a feeling if a foreign entity invaded Brigantine and slaughtered 1,100 people, what would our response be? You and I know what our response would be.
That's right.
But now, the understanding of the chaos in Israel goes back to 3000 BC, when David played around with Bathsheba, and this prophet Samuel said to David, "The sword will be in your house forever." And now here we are 5,000 years later, and the chaos is still going on, and I believe that the Israeli state has the right to end the atrocity that went on October 7th.
That's right.
And it's going to continue. It has to come to a stop. The Board of Education it's got the kids. They're indoctrinated. Let's think choice of school. Thank you, and you have a blessed day, John.
Thanks. You too. Thanks for the call. You know, Michael brings up, and I'll get to the calls again, just a moment. He brings up a subject, and this happened to me in college, and I remember that there was an incident, and I believe I was a sophomore in college. So this would be around 1970. And we had an incident with the neighborhood kids, and let's face it, the neighborhood that LaSalle was in was not the best, and still isn't the best today. But the neighborhood kids were remember antennas were on the cars, remember that? And they were taking antennas and they were pulling them off the cars. They were yanking them off the cars. And some students in the dorms where the cars were parked, the students came out with baseball bats. There was like maybe a half dozen of them. They came out with baseball bats and they attacked the kids and they chased them away. Okay? That's what happened. Now, the next day, there was all kinds of protests, all kinds of things. Oh, we have to do more for the community. That's why these kids are doing this. Wait a minute. So the windup was that the school had to give the community so many hours a week of our gym so that they could use it for whatever they wanted to do. Do you believe that? And Michael just brought that up to my mind. Indoctrination of students, that was going on in 1970. And it continues today. Howard in EHT. Howard, good morning. Welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Yeah, good morning. Listen, I don't have much time, but your callers have been astounding. But the couple of really great ones the last little bit here. I have one thing to say. That gentleman that's called about his father that took care of the Jewish guy while in Nazi Germany,
yes,
saved him from the Gestapo.
Yes.
The only thing that did for me, and I'm a Jewish guy and a former Marine, the only thing that told me was that the population knew about what was being done in Germany.
Yes.
And it was that gentleman's job was not just to save one Jew, but was to save himself and all the other people that were under that terrible regime.
Yes.
And to do nothing. I mean, it wasn't doing nothing to save one person. I'll say that.
Yes.
But his real action should have been to join the community, find people that wanted to fight against that, or get the hell out of that country and find someplace else to live.
Yeah.
And I guess, and when I say that, that's what it means when you go into a war and you have to kill people that are what is considered to be innocent.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that if they're innocent, then they should be fighting those people that are trying to damage them and damage the rest of the world. And if they're not, then it's just what the game of war, which is an ugly game, terrible game, but it is what it is. So that's my opinion of what I see. So, and it goes for these people in this country too.
Yeah.
If you think that these people that are doing this to the kids that they're doing today, and they're doing these things with abortion to the last month, the last minute, there's going to be a payback. There is going to be a war against them.
Yeah.
And I believe it. They're going to have to pay the price at some point.
Yes, that's right.
Because it is a horrific thing that's going on.
Yes.
And to say that it's not is that same people that were in that war before us that did not try to change the government and the things that they knew should have known what were terribly wrong. All right, that's my opinion.
Thanks for the call, Howard. One of the things that Howard said, maybe get out of that country. But I imagine it wasn't too easy to get out of Germany in 1940 or 1941. I would imagine they didn't let people leave, Not under that regime. Chuck and Absecon. Chuck is back. Welcome.
Hey, John. I just a couple things. Just getting back to what we've been discussing all day. Stalin did what he did. Okay, that we didn't do that. Stalin did that.
Yes.
Mao Zedong did what he did. Hundreds of millions of people were killed. We didn't do that. They did that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I didn't hear mentioned last week on your show, I'm always listening, John. You got a great show.
Thank you.
Sometimes I call when I have something to say. Does anybody bring up what Chuck Schumer did that just totally obliterated the impeachment process in the Constitution?
No.
By just dismissing the Mayorkas impeachment?
Oh, yeah. No, nobody brought that up.
Yeah, nobody brought that up.
No.
You realize that the Constitution was totally shredded as far as the impeachment clause is concerned? Okay, now, the Democrats were tripping over each other and toasting champagne. Could you even tell me what they impeached Trump for? I know one was a bogus phone call to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Probably because he was going to uncover the kickback money that comes to this country. And the whole thing with Biden and the Burisma and his son.
Yeah.
Could that be a possibility? That's why they went after Trump? A possibility?
That thing about Mayorkas, he is by law bound to protect our borders. That's his job.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it. That's
in the Constitution.
That's right.
Too.
That is. Yes, it is.
We're just, protect our borders.
That's
We're
right.
a sovereign state, sovereign country.
That's right.
Right? So not only do we not protect our own borders and let this invasion take place, and fentanyl and whoever's coming into the country, who knows how many protesters are here illegally?
I'm sure. Many.
Yeah, where's the FBI?
It just boggles the mind. It really does.
It's amazing to me, the contrast. you have Biden and Obama and Clinton, the Radio City Music Hall having a big fundraiser, millionaires, while Trump's at a funeral or a viewing for a slain cop in New York, right? And then Trump's being totally persecuted on bogus charges in New York. And what's he do? He goes to a construction job, and he goes to a construction job, and the guys are cheering USA, USA, we love Trump. And right around the corner, you got a bunch of college skulls full of mush.
Yeah.
Chanting death to America. You can't make it up.
Oh, I know. It's really, and you notice the media didn't say anything about that thing where Biden was, where he was at the fundraiser, and I think they raised something like $25 million that night. You know,
yeah. And Trump had a fundraiser in Florida, and I think they raised $50 million.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was brushed under.
Oh no, they didn't say that. Yeah.
Well. I'll tell you one thing was brushed under the carpet is this move by Chucky Schumer.
Yeah, that's right.
I haven't heard a peep about it, and people should be outraged because you know what that would have brought up, John? It would have brought up the debate about the illegals flooding this country.
That's right.
Okay, and the shutdown at the border. It would have brought up a debate in front of everybody, and that's what they didn't want. They didn't want that out there.
That's right. You hit that nail right on the head. Chuck, thanks for the call. Greg and Absecon. Greg, good morning. You're on Talk with a Purpose.
This is Massey.
Welcome back.
Final, I hope. For me, anyway.
Okay.
Second World War. We were finally given the pay stub to what? To rebuild Europe.
Yes.
When it was all said and done, that's exactly what we did. We rebuilt it.
Yeah. That's right.
The bottom line.
Yeah.
We never got paid back.
No.
One did.
Hey, listen.
Japan paid us back.
Listen, if we got paid back for every country that we lent money to, do you know how much the national debt would be wiped out in about a minute?
But the country isn't big enough to
That's right. I mean, come on. Bad debt, that's what the United States specializes in.
Exactly. It would sink us, probably.
Right. That's right.
Have a good one.
You too. Angelo and Margate. Angelo, welcome to Talk with a Purpose.
Yo, John, what's going on? It's a classic show today. Originally, I was going to call to chime in about the World War II thing. But frankly, what prompted me to call was when you started talking about funny headlines that you had seen. So I want to keep it light. Everything's been pretty heavy. And, John, you could Google this. I've been reading the New York Post 50-plus years, since I was a sophomore in high school. Clinton's in office. They just had his portrait done. On the left side, there's the portrait of President Clinton. On the right, big type, John, I'm not BSing, Clinton well hung. You could Google it. You could Google it on the front page of the Post. Left side, there's a whole picture of Clinton. This is during the fall of Joan and all that stuff. On the right, big 10-point print, man. Clinton well hung.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I wanted to keep it on a light note. I wanted to finish on a light note.
That's good.
About World War II another time. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Angelo. That is good. I'll have to steal that someday. William and AC. William, you're welcome back.
Yeah, John, you know, Chuck Schumer didn't have the power to get rid of that impeachment before the Senate. He doesn't have that kind of power. The truth is the Republicans said, look, don't bring those nutheads over here. Don't bring that Jim Jordan and that Comer over here with all that dumb stuff. We don't have time for it. We're doing real work here. That's why it didn't come over, because the Republicans didn't want to hear all that dumb crap. And as far as Marjorie Taylor Greene, as far as her like kicking out Johnson, you know, she's not going to do anything because they know that if they throw him out and there's another vote for Speaker of the House, the new Speaker of the House is going to be Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat, because all those Republicans that have seats that have Democrat, that's holding Democrat seats in the Republican Party, they may not switch parties, but they're not going to vote for no more of that foolishness. Not this close to the election. And John, listen, you have a great weekend, guys.
You too, William. You too. Appreciate your call back. Well, what do I say about this show? 2 minutes left? Okay. What can we say? Can we talk about? Yeah, we can talk about the war. Let's. It was just an innocent thing that Bob brought up about the war, and that fueled the whole show. Maybe I should consult with Bob for next week's show. What do you think? Oh boy, we do have fun on this program, don't we? That's going to put the wraps on another edition of Talk with a Purpose. Thanks to Chris Coleman, our program director and producer, and really thanks to you because you guys made the show today with all of the stories about World War II. And I should put my 2 cents in. Uncle Phil, wherever you are, he fought he was one of the first Marines to Iwo Jima, and he fought in World War II, and he came back, and I know he had permanent PTSD. So a shout out to him as well. Thanks to everyone listening. And again, we will do it all over again next Saturday. Will we, Chris? Yeah, I think so. Talk with a Purpose is the show. Saturdays 9 till noon, WPG Talk Radio 95.5. And stay tuned for Carmen, who's coming up from his hospital bed in Norway, I think. Good luck to Carmen. Should I stay around, Chris, in case? You take care of yourself. Have a good week.
The preceding program was paid for and presented by John DeMasi.